Okay, hello everyone. This is the URBONUS podcast, and I'm glad to welcome my beloved guest, Errick McCollum, in some crazy circumstances with some breaking news just right before the podcast, with some late podcast absences as well. There are just two of us, but every time I have Errick on the podcast, I'm super excited, and every time I'm super excited to hear his thoughts. And there are a lot of things to discuss on this podcast. So first of all, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back. Off-season time, usually the best time to talk, right?
Yeah. Karšiaka made this announcement about you staying in the club for one more season. Yes, it was yesterday, right? We were recording it on Monday. And I actually thought that it was a clear 2-year deal. So I was surprised that it was even announced.
For sure, but I think a lot of people didn't know. So they just wanted, everyone to be on the same page, I believe.
And also, probably in Europe, you can't be secure about your future, right? So it has to be announced every year. In some situations, every month, like in China. So
yeah, you could have a 2, 3, 4-year deal as we see, and it's really not as guaranteed as you think. So I'm just thankful to be returning. I had fun there. I enjoyed myself, and I think it was a successful season. And I'm looking forward to seeing those fans again and my family returning to the city.
Yeah, you were close. Amazing run in the Turkish Championship. We were also close of getting the champ, actually, on this podcast, Will Clyburn, who had an amazing season ending, both individually and for Efes. But as I said, there's a lot of things to discuss on this podcast, including few of the hottest kind of free agents, but I would say players to hit the market this offseason. Also, we have this situation with Barca. We were about to discuss Nikola Mirotic exiting his long-term contract, but now we will discuss Šarūnas Jasikevičius parting ways with Barca. I have questions for you about Victor Wembanyama, about Team USA actually basically having the roster confirmed for the World Cup. A lot of things to discuss in this podcast, but let's share our reactions about this whole situation in Barcelona. First of all, when many thought that Šarūnas Jasikevičius will stay, the club announced that he's leaving, and more surprising, Roger Grimau, the former head coach of their youth team and of course former legend of Barcelona, is taking over for the next 2 years. So your initial reaction reading these news?
I was surprised, just because Šarūnas had done a good job there. Obviously they didn't get the coveted EuroLeague title, but he had a lot of success. And the Copa del Rey, within the Spanish League ACB, he won a title coming off that year. It's not easy. Real Madrid was the EuroLeague champions, and they kind of dominated that series with the sweep. So I just thought like he had them on the up and up. They were always right there. From getting that EuroLeague title, whether it was getting to the Final Four, maybe a shot or two here or there, or a possession there. They were right there, and you could just see that they were playing quality basketball, and the team was a power in Europe. And I think before he got there were some struggles. I seen a stat that showed basically like in the last 8 years, he's won as many or more titles before he got there as in his 3-year period. So, it was very impressive. Like he was able to do something in 3 years that those other coaches weren't able to do in 8. So, I think sometimes teams overreact, and, really big, strong clubs, they take success for granted. And because you have a big name, because you have had success in the past and tradition, you start to believe that it's like that every year. And it's not. You need the right team, you need health, you need the right coach, the right system. And I think it's unfortunate that he was let go, because he's coming off a championship. Like, you don't want to see that, for coaches or for players or anybody. Like he deserved that, at least an extension, another year to try at it again, with a ACB title. So, I'm sure he'll land on his feet. He's a respected coach. He'll be in a good job somewhere. Just a matter of time, of when, not if.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you're replacing Šarūnas Jasikevičius with Roger Grimau, it really proves that you're on a big budget cut, and it was a very surprising move. I haven't heard anything close to that. If not Saras, everybody was thinking that, okay, maybe they're in negotiations with Xavi Pascual. Maybe it's Ioannis Foropoulos. Maybe it's Andrea Trinchieri. So it came out of nowhere, but this move really proves that Barca will have different financial capabilities the following year. Many players are set to leave the club, starting with Nikola Mirotic. But you made a good point. First of all, thanks for following me on Twitter, because that stat you saw was from my Twitter feed. In 3 years for Barca, Saras won 2 of 3 ACB titles, 2 of 3 Copa del Rey titles. He made the Final Four in all 3 seasons. And as you mentioned, it took 9 years for Barca to win 2 ACB titles before, and 8 years to clinch 4 major domestic league trophies. But there's this one thing. When I tweeted this, of course, I received a lot of funny comments that this tweet was sponsored by Šarūnas Jasikevičius for his new extension. But can you expand in? It's also related to the question that I have about Nikola Mirotic and evaluating his tenure in Barca, because for many European fans, but I think it's also related to NBA fans, if you're not winning the championship, it's a failure. And for Barca, many treat that Barca, for these few years, they have at least top 2 budget in Europe with Real Madrid. If you're not winning the EuroLeague, many people consider it as a failure, as a bust, both for Mirotic, maybe both for Barca and Šarūnas Jasikevičius. What do you think about if that's fair, or I mean, you see some sense in a way that you spend so much money, let's say in 3 years, maybe something close to 120 millions just to win the EuroLeague, and you don't?
I mean, I sense the disappointment. I understand, where they're coming from in that aspect, but it's not a failure. I mean, if you just look at the track record of so many teams with those big budgets, if that was the case, those teams will win the EuroLeague every year, but they don't. Like, EuroLeague's been around for a while, and you don't see teams, the same teams winning every season. Like, there's always some upsets. There's always some years where, Panathinaikos was great, then they had a down period. Cheska was, always getting there, kind of like Barcelona, but they just couldn't get over the hump. And then they finally were able to get over the hump, win some championships. Real Madrid, they're always in the mix, but they don't win every year. Barcelona, it's just, they're a big power, but there's, always another 5 or 6 teams who are in the mix. And it's not realistic to expect a title every year. If that's the case, most of these organizations have failed probably 95% of their existence, because some years they're not going to win a EuroLeague title. It doesn't mean it's a failure if you win ACB, if you win your cup, your domestic cup, whatever the case may be, or if the team shows growth. Some years the main guy could be hurt. It could throw everything off rhythm. Maybe you came in with a lot of new players. The chemistry isn't fully developed. You're playing against other teams who've been together 4 or 5 years. Like, there's so many different factors that have to do with the championship, that just because you spent a lot of money doesn't mean all players will miss, all things will go right. I mean, it takes time. It's a process. And I think that's probably what you saw this year with Efes, with them getting those new pieces, having guys in and out the rotation. Like, I'm sure they'll play better next year, now that they have that chemistry and that continuity. And it's probably why you see Real Madrid continue to have so much success, because they don't have much turnover. It's those same guys, and they're getting older. Yeah, they're 35, 36, 37, but with, all the science, all the advancements in sports and saving your body, you're seeing older guys being able to play at a high level. But that continuity, that chemistry, that leadership, that's the difference. So I think anytime you can keep a coach and the core of a team together for a while, and you throw in a couple pieces, 1 or 2 different players, you have a greater chance. But to expect championships every year, I don't care if you're Barcelona, I don't care if you're Madrid, Fener, doesn't matter who you are. Like, it's just not possible, in a modern day EuroLeague.
Yeah, I agree with you. And especially, I think that, okay, regular season don't matter in the end, but I think it's also a good indicator how well the team, the coach is doing. And I mean, we all can agree that Barca was one of the best EuroLeague teams in the last 3 years. They were always consistent, no matter who was playing. A lot of players were injured. Mirotic was out for 6 months. Nikolaitis was out the last season for a long stretch of the season. So Corey Higgins, I mean, their main scorer basically missed both Final Fours. And your season, this whole continuity, this whole process is judged by 2 games in 3 days over 1 weekend. So it probably tells a lot about how unfair the system of the EuroLeague is when you decide the championship in 2 games, basically. So a lot of is based on the momentum. But there's another perspective of the situation. How do you feel as a player when you're judged by the titles? And because that's the same thing in the NBA. All these legends, maybe they're getting less respect or they're even disrespected because they haven't won the title. At the same time, maybe even players, when they try to rank those greats, they say, "Oh, he won like 6, like MJ won the 6 titles. LeBron is still behind because of that, because he didn't prove that he can take this team on the top." How do you feel about these evaluations, dependent on the titles?
I mean, it's just, if you're a player or someone who's deep involved in a game, whether it's on the analytical side, whether it's somebody who just like, how difficult it is to win a championship. Like, I don't think greatness is always predicated on the amount of championships players win. I think because that is a team thing. Like, this is a team game. Okay, one player can control the outcome of games. Sometimes at the end, one player can, elevate the play of his teammates, can make an organization better, but one player cannot win alone, no matter how special, how great that player is. You've seen, if you compare an NBA, everybody watched The Last Dance. Michael Jordan was special. He was unguardable. But until help arrived, Scottie Pippen, you get those guys coming in, that chemistry getting built, those other players, those key role guys. That's when you've seen them start to advance in the playoffs, to start to be able to get over those Pistons teams, those Celtics teams, and to be able to win championships. Did that take away from his greatness? No. Was he just as good with 0 championships as he was with 3? Of course. But on the outside looking in, you're going to undervalue that. You're not going to think he's as high level player. Like, just because someone, doesn't have a EuroLeague or maybe has 4 or 5, it doesn't make you a better player than someone. Yes, you've been on a big stage. Yes, you were able to have more team success, but individually, if you have an eye for the talent for the game of basketball, you know who's special and who's not. And I think fans put a lot of titles when they match it with greatness. I don't think it's accurate, especially in Europe, with teams having unequal budgets, teams having advantages when it comes to facilities, resources, travel. Every team is not built equally. So it's just unfair to expect someone coming from an inferior situation to constantly defeat and be better than the superior teams, not just roster-wise. I'm talking about financially, depth, how they're able to rotate guys, how your body's able to be fresh, how guys can play less minutes. Like, some teams, the teams don't have the budget. Guys have to play 30 minutes, 35 minutes a game. Like, it's just not the same when you're on a team that can play 20 minutes and you can be rested throughout the whole year, or a main guy can be out and you still go to the Final Four. Like, that can't happen to majority of teams. As we've seen, Kevin Punter was out, and they were a different team. Like, it just was not the same. And that's the impact of a team who is good, but does not have the power or the budget of some of those big dogs. And they're not able to withstand one player being missing. Whereas at Barcelona, Corey Higgins is out all season, maybe one of their best players, arguably. And it's almost like, okay, they weren't as good, but they still had great results. Still got to the Final Four, still were a championship contender. No one questioned that.
Yeah, interesting updates in Barcelona camp. Together with Šarūnas, it is expected that Nikola Mirotic will leave the club. Corey Higgins, despite having a contract for the next year, is expected to leave. I heard that the same goes with Nicolas Laprovitola. Probably from the guys that are on expiring contracts, there's Mike Tobey, somebody else. There were rumors that Sertac Shanley also will leave, but again, we saw reports that there are positive feelings about the potential renewal, although there were positive feelings about Šarūnas Jasikevičius staying in the club as well. So it's very tricky when it comes with this information that is getting on media. And yeah, from what I heard about Roger Grimau, I didn't hear much. I even tried to go through my sources quickly. Again, we had like 30 or 60 minutes to prepare for this podcast after the breaking news about Šarūnas Jasikevičius. I saw some guys from Barcelona tweeting and saying that he's a basketball maniac. He loves the game a lot. He's very passionate. He was known as a guy who brings a lot of passion to the game. He was not the most athletic player on the court. He was not the best shooter. I actually read a great tweet from the Twitter profile that you must follow. It's Savas BDL, SAVAS BDL. And he tweeted, "Gotta hope Grimau's coaching isn't anything like his shooting form," which is true. But it's a very interesting move, because what's interesting that when Barca made a big rebuild, Xavi Pascual, who just took over Barca like 14, 15 years ago, he was also coming from the youth team. But I just think, if I'm not mistaken, he also worked as an assistant coach for probably Duško Ivanović. But he took over the club and they won the championship. The last championship they actually won in the EuroLeague in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So who knows? But this move just shows that a lot of changes are coming to one of the EuroLeague powerhouses, and it's unclear if they're gonna remain on the top. Regarding Šarūnas Jasikevičius, I don't see many openings in the EuroLeague. There are these reports about Sergio Scariolo potentially staying in the club after all these rumors. Monaco, there was this rumor if Sasha Obradović is staying or not. He also didn't feel very confident about his future, but at the same time, like last week, I think Monaco's GM commented those rumors, and he said that, well, Sasha has the contract for the following year, so I don't know why he's so worried. So, I mean, it's very interesting, because I also hear that Šarūnas Jasikevičius might get get job in the NBA as an assistant coach, and not sure. Again, I didn't have enough time to check those rumors. Actually, I'm reading those rumors right now on our Slack channel. That's what I've heard too, that Jasikevičius could be Memphis Grizzlies assistant coach. So a lot of interesting developments during these days. And maybe him going to the NBA as an assistant coach shows that he has some goals to get a shot at head coaching in the NBA. What do you think about this possibility, looking at long term for sure, because he has to go through that NBA system, let's say, starting from the assistant coach and then trying to apply for the head coach job?
I think he probably has the most realistic step and ladder to the league, just because his experience as a player, not only respected in Europe, everything he's done in the European game, but he was also very good in the NBA. I remember those years in the Pacers. And, those things allow him to be familiar with the style of NBA, how things kind of run from the inside out. And I think now, by being an assistant coach, it gives him the chance to see the dynamic, not from a player's perspective, but from a coach's perspective. He can put that experience he had as a player, those things he used, take some of his tactics, the things he learned in Europe. But the NBA is different. I think he knows that. He played that. He's a smart guy. He'll adjust his style a little bit. He'll tweak it. But if he puts the time in, and Memphis has a good team. They have a good young core. They have some immaturity there, but things are in place. And usually when you're an assistant on a team that's a top team in its conference, whether top 3, top 4 team usually has playoff success, those coaches get fast tracked to head coaching positions. So it's smart for him to choose a team that not only is young, that's going to be good for many years if they're able to continue to retain their players and continue to keep that core. And I think it's a great place to go for him, just to continue to boost and push himself. Although the West is very difficult, so many good teams, it's tough. I do believe Memphis is probably a top 4 or 5 team in the West still. And, when guys are always on the court, when they're not doing crazy things off the court, they show that they can be a top 2 or 3 team in the West. So I do think he has NBA potential. He has the resume. He has the experience. He has the know-how. Now it's just a matter of just adjusting his style. And I think that assistant coaching in the NBA will be a great time for him to see, the differences and interactions with players in Europe compared to NBA, and, how to, treat certain players a certain way. It's different in the league. Like, I don't want to say you have to coddle players, but with some players, they don't respond well to aggressive type of coaching. And that's, as you've seen in NBA, gets coaches fired often or, relieved from their duties. So I think as a player, he knows that. And we talked about it in many different podcasts. European coaches have ultimate power. In NBA, that power is reduced. But they pay you well, on time, all the resources, everything's there. Everything's perfect. So, you got to deal with having to build a good relationship with your best players, or it could be hard for you as a coach.
Yeah, that should be a hell of adjustment for Šarūnas Jasikevičius, who was radical about trying to make his team playing his way. In the NBA, it's a whole different world, and he didn't even hide it. I mean, he also mentioned that he cannot watch the NBA basketball because it's so different from what he used to and what he tries to do on European basketball courts. So I don't know. I'm shocked, to be honest. I'm really shocked, and there are a lot of people who think that for Saras this mental change might be too hard. Maybe this NBA basketball is not for him. I'm not questioning his knowledge. He's one of the best basketball masterminds that we have in Europe, starting from his playing years and now as the head coach. He proved that. It's about his way, which had this expiration date many years ago in the NBA. So we'll see. You mentioned Western Conference, tight race in the Western Conference. What do you think? How many years it will take for Victor Wembanyama and San Antonio Spurs to return to the top of the West, or to be among the Western Championship contenders or NBA title contenders?
Ooh, the problem is I believe in Victor. I think he's special. I think he's a once-in-a-generation talent. I think he's going to be good from day one. I think he probably needs 2 to 3 years to really get into his body, adapt to the style of play, and what the everyday grueling task of the NBA is like. I think he's going to be good from day one. But I think in like 3 years, you're going to see like him take a huge leap, like just be a different level of a monster. But the team, they're going to be pretty bad early, so they're going to get a lot of draft picks. Spurs usually do a good job of developing young players, and they do an excellent job of drafting and putting together the right pieces. I think a lot of it is tied to Pop. If Coach Popovich could be there for a while, I think you'll see that ascension start to happen a little sooner. But the West is tough. Okay, so you don't want to count Golden State, because I'd say three years Spurs are going to be terrible. And after the 3 years, I think Golden State's core will be pretty much finished. You look at it, they're probably 35-ish, 34-ish. 3 years, Draymond, Clay, Steph, will they be able to still win championships? I don't know, maybe, but it's probably not as likely to have a core of 3 guys who are 37-ish, 38 competing. But you still have Memphis, who's young. You have New Orleans Pelicans, who's young, who's talented. Then you throw in the mix Sacramento. They're going to be special. I mean, they have all the pieces. Their core is in that 25 to 27 range, and they're just growing. Like, they have something, they're building something, which is special, because Sacramento is usually a team that's known as a horrible organization, but you could tell like Mike Brown's changing the narrative and he's getting guys to buy in. And then you think Dallas. Well, I mean, Luca's only going to get better. They have Kyrie there. It's a good city. It attracts free agents. That makes it tough as well. And, I'm just thinking about all these teams, and I see like the Spurs in Houston as like a young, intriguing bottom type of team that has potential to rise if they can get 1 or 2 free agents and then make all the proper draft moves. So I don't see them returning to like championship caliber in the next 5 years, but I do see him making an impact and potentially being, fighting for them play-in spots, maybe in that 6 to 8 range, within like 4 or 5 years. Because right now they're just too young. Like, they don't have the experience. They have too many young players. They don't have veteran leadership. They don't have anyone who's been there. They need to bring in a vet who's been there to kind of show the young guys the ropes, how to be professional. And I'm sure they're working on all these things. But I do believe in the Spurs organization and what they stand for. And I think there's no better place he could have went to get drafted. There's no distractions. It's a smaller market. They have experience with European players. They've been there, done that. And then as you see on my Instagram, those old players for the Spurs have already took him under his wing. You already see Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Sean Elliott, Manu Ginobili. All these guys are going to be teaching him everything they know, hoping to make his transition as easy as possible. And remember, this is a new place. This is a kid who's played in France his whole life. And now he's going to be a foreigner in another country, dealing with a different change of scenery, being away from people that he sees on a regular. Like, it's not easy. And I think he'll adjust, but give him time, let him come into his own. And I think he'll be what everyone expects him to be, in due time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm also a big believer in Victor Wembanyama. And You actually made some good points about the impact of these vets. Victor himself told that during this dinner with all these legends, he learned about the NBA more than he learned in these years before. That will help for sure. For sure, it will help that he'll be in San Antonio. I know even some NBA people think that the draft process was rigged, that San Antonio got this first draft pick, because, I mean, it made so much sense for everyone to see Victor Wembanyama starting his journey in San Antonio. And at the same time, the only concern is his body, probably. We didn't have anything close to him of his size and the way he moves. There were these giants like Yao Ming, like Sean Bradley, and all these, Dikembe Mutombo, Manute Bol, all these legendary players, and many of them had some health issues related to the enormous body. Probably the latest nature freak that we had was Zion Williamson, and we saw how tough for him it was to adjust to his body. But at the same time, I think that Wembanyama is a bit different because he has this crazy matured approach toward his body. The way he treats his body, the way he's disciplined about routines, preparing himself. I talked to many people and they said that, hey, this is extraordinary for a 18-year-old kid. So I think that will help him a little bit, try to make sure that his body will be able to go through these NBA bodies as well, through this 82-game experience. And because regarding his skill, his game, I don't have any doubts. And to be honest, the last season in French Championship, he was averaging something close to 6 points per game. He had this crazy stat sheet that I actually had on my laptop right now on my screen, but somewhere I lost it. But anyway, I really believe that he might be averaging even more in his first couple of years in the NBA, because I watched the French League finals closely, and it wasn't like Metropolitans was forcing their game through Wembanyama. It was, I would say, very natural flow of trying to play team basketball and having this great advantage in the post-up or even in the mid-range. And he was a part of the team. It was not just Wembanyama and others. And the way he was involved in the game, it was interesting to watch, really. It was not like he was forcing or they were forcing the game. Wembanyama was also acting pretty matured. Monaco did a great job trying to stop him, trying to contain him. But I talked with many people from Monaco team, and they said that, wow, we were impressed the way he faced the challenge, because we were putting everything on him to stop him, to disturb the team, the flow of the team. But throughout every game, he was really adjusting very well. They liked his body language. They liked how matured he accepted the challenge, and he did some great adjustments throughout the series, even though they swept. And I even read those comments on Twitter that how could this team with the 1st and 7th NBA draft pick could be swept in the finals, in the French finals. So I mean, that's the lack of information that the many US basketball fans has about European basketball. It's really tough to beat one of the best teams in Europe, even though you're playing at the French League finals, even though you have top 7, two draft picks from the top 7, and you have this generational talent. He was just not ready yet.
They haven't even peaked yet. They're still children, exactly. Like young men.
Yeah, playing against grown men with a lot of EuroLeague and NBA experience. So it was basically no chance for them to have high hopes on winning those series. But yeah, never mind. I just had this question for you. I also asked this many Monaco players. What do you think is the most underrated Wembanyama's skill that he's bringing to the NBA, or might be overlooked by his size or ability to shoot from the outside?
I think everyone's going to look at the appeal of like his movements, his handle, how he's able to shoot the basketball, all the offensive things. I think that's really underrated is his shot blocking, his defense. Like, he has great timing. Some of the things I'm watching just special, like how he's able to recover those second jumps. And usually guys who are that tall, like they usually have foul problems. You know, he stays out of foul trouble. You know, he uses his body, his length. You know, he's really good at keeping the offensive player away from his chest. This is something you want to do against those guys who are longer, who are taller. You want to get into their chest so they can't really challenge you, or, you know, they can't, you know, adjust your shot. But I think like defensively, he's going to show something that a lot of people haven't seen. Obviously, yes, he's going to get stronger. I don't think he needs to get big or bulky. No, just get stronger, stay lean, stay healthy, continue to do what you have been doing. Trust the process. That's why I think in 3 years, as he continues to mature and develop, like he's still adolescent, he's still going through changes with his body naturally. Puberty, 18 years old, 19 years old. This is what you do. I think when I was 18 years old, I was 5'11" or 6 foot. I was a senior in high school. And then by the time I signed my letter of intent to go to college, so after one summer, I went from 6 foot to 6'2". So, okay, it's only 2 inches, but like that gives you an idea that like you're still growing and maturing mentally, not just height wise, but physically, weight, everything. So I think the defensive prowess that he will be able to show will be special. He'll be a guy who's capable of winning Defensive Player of the Year, but also MVP, you know, of the league. And we haven't seen that since Michael Jordan. Like he was the last one, I think, to win both of those awards.
Yeah, big is going to be special. Let's talk about some EuroLeague basketball right now. And before we are heading to EuroLeague off-season and free agency topic, Panathinaikos made one of their biggest first official moves. They already announced some Greek players, but of course, Luca Vildoza is the first big signing, big import signing they made. 3-year deal, as it was officially reported by the club. What are your first thoughts about this move? What kind of tone it sets for the rest of the roster that might be built in Athens by Ergin?
I think they were eager to secure a point guard. We saw in the market this year that there was a shortage of point guards. And that's when you see, you know, when guys were coming back from the NBA, a lot of teams eager, a lot of teams, you know, looking to make changes. And it's just a tough position. You know, it's a lot of responsibility. And I think that they were getting someone who, you know, has experience, who can play the pick and roll, who's a solid player. And he showed some of his talent in Red Star. And they wanted to secure that and, you know, to make things easier. I'm not sure, you know, how much of a fit he is for Ottoman. I think he is a good player. I think he is a good creator. Ottoman usually likes his guards that score a little bit more. But, you know, maybe if he can put alongside, you know, another complementary piece who's a big scorer, I think it could be a good fit. I mean, you look at Misic, you look at Larkin, those are big time scorers. Even if you go back when I played for him, big scorer, Carlos Arroyo, like he's had guards who can really put the ball in the hoop. So I think Vildoza is a really good player. But I think he can create, he can do those type of things, but I don't think he's a big time scorer per se. I don't think no one would put him in that category. So we'll see how it works. We'll see how it transitions. But I do like the signing because anytime you can secure a starting level point guard in the EuroLeague, you kind of have to jump the trigger because you don't want to wait, get in bidding wars, and maybe miss out on the guy and be stuck with maybe a third or fourth option.
Yeah, you made good points about saying that he's not that 100% type of Ataman's guard, because I've actually heard rumors that Vildoza was basically probably was signed before they reached an agreement with Ergin Ataman. So it might have been the decision made not by the new coach, but by the administration, by the front office people, which is not surprising in Europe. That's how it works. And even in the NBA, they move pieces not necessarily wanted to please what the head coach wants. So that's okay. And we're still not sure if he's going to be the starting guard or not, although if the information that is spread about his contract suggests that he should be a starter, but we'll see. This, as you mentioned, this point guard market was a bit unpredictable. A lot of players were either on expiring on their contracts or locked in some teams. Like, for example, nobody knew that Kevin Pangos will hit the free agency. Kostas Sloukas, everybody took it for granted that he's gonna stay. Now he's on the market, although you couldn't expect him to move from Olympiacos to Panathinaikos, but still. And now apparently Darius
did the opposite. Spanoulis did it. Why not? You know,
Sloukas is different. I mean, Spanoulis was young dog when he made this move. He wanted to become an alpha dog. Sloukas is
True.
like, how old? 34? I mean, he wants peace in his life, I guess. Nobody wants to suffer this one more time, moving from Panathinaikos to Olympiacos. It would be too tough to handle, probably.
Especially in your family.
If I'm old, I mean, if I'm 34, I don't want anything like that. So let's say that he's not considering Panathinaikos very seriously. And now we have the situation where apparently Darius Thompson, who's also under the contract with Baskonia, but probably he will be bought out by one of the EuroLeague powerhouses. So yeah, Panathinaikos made a move in advance because the situation was also connected to the point guard market. Okay, I have 5, I would say, hottest names. Maybe some argue with me, but at least for sure 5 of top 10 hottest names in this summer market. And we'll try to find either the best fit or, let's say, the most intriguing destination for these players from our perspective, for our personal reasons. And let's start from the guy that we already mentioned, Kostas Sloukas. This is a very interesting situation. Everybody thought that he's going to extend the contract with Olympiacos, but there are some disagreements in some situations, and it's really highly likely that he might move. Where would you see him landing?
He had to leave. I have read reports, that maybe Clayton stays in Finner, maybe he doesn't, but I do think he would be really good into the system. I mean, he's a guy that can play the pick and roll. He can create. He gives him another dimension. He's a good shooter. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Kalathis, if he's staying, if he's not. But, it'll be a reunion going back to Finner. He's already familiar there. He had lots of success with Obradovic. I think he would be welcomed. They have the money. And, he wouldn't have that pressure, like you mentioned, going to Panathinaikos or, having to deal with that internal pressure. And then sometimes for local players, it's a relief to leave your country. There's so much pressure being put on. I know, talking to some teammates, talking to guys, when you play in your home country, like, you understand everything that's being written and spoken about you. Sometimes it's hard on your family, everything. And kind of get away, give you a refresher. I know for American players, like, I don't know half the stuff they say about me, good or bad. So I sleep peacefully. But it's a little different when, those things, hurt, or, your family gets offended, and, fans can be cruel. So it's not an easy situation.
Yeah. Fenerbahce would make a lot of sense. He didn't even, at least he tried not to celebrate this game winner in the EuroLeague playoff series when he hit that shot in Istanbul. He played there, he knows everything out there, and for sure, I think that they would be glad to have him in Fenerbahce. At the same time, from what I understand, he wants more playing time and to play big minutes more consistently. So, not sure how it would go with this Fenerbahce rotation. We don't know if Kalathis is staying or not. We don't know if Dorsey is staying or not, because if at least most of these guys are staying, there's also Scottie Wilbekin, there's also Marko Guduric who can handle the ball. It's not sure how it would please one of his priorities. Then I thought about Efes, actually. Efes was the team who was about, okay, we pay you a lot, but we give you to play 35 minutes per game for the entire year. And that's how it went with Wilbekin, Clyburn and Mitic, and then later with Shane Larkin when he returned from the injury. But at the same time, I don't know how it goes with the new coach, Erdem Can. If he likes to play, if he likes to rotate his players, or if he heavily trusts his core players. Not sure how it goes with his approach. I heard rumors that he might be moving to Spain. But again, Real Madrid, it feels like they signed Facundo Campasso. Of course, if you have money, if you have flexibility to also add Kostas Sloukas to your backcourt, which already has like 10 players on the roster, that's cool. I go with Sloukas, but at the same time, can Sloukas expect a lot of playing time there where they have 20 players? Not really. So then I thought that maybe it's Barca, because Saras, for sure, as somebody who followed Željko Obradović footsteps, you could see some sense. Sloukas also thrived under Željko Obradović, and such a smart player like Sloukas would definitely fit Barcelona, but now he's gone. So it's a very interesting situation. So that's why I'm so surprised that he's leaving Olympiacos, because for me it doesn't look like there's some great spots for him to move. But unless Fenerbahce will do some big moves with Dorsey or Kalaitis as well.
And if he wants minutes, he should stay away from Spain, just because the Spanish style is to rotate players. Doesn't matter what team it is. Like, they like to keep the minutes low. You're in that 20 to 23 minute range. And then at Real Madrid, there's so many players, it's even harder. So, like, if it's about money or if it's about minutes, he's going to make a decision for himself. He's going to see. But I know how Barjoka's style is. Like, you sit out maybe the whole first quarter, and then you play 10 minutes straight. Then you sit out the whole third quarter, then you play 10 minutes straight. So it's a lot to change. With another hidden place that I think could be a good fit for him is Partizan. He's already been with Dzeko. They've been able to find money in new ways. And I think a lot of that is dependent upon, if Punter is able to go there, or if he's going to leave. Obviously that opens up a lot of money. There's minutes there. They do need a pick and roll player. He'll have the ball in his hands. That could be definitely intriguing. The only thing I don't like about Efes is it's two guards who are smaller, who are not defensive player. So I liked Shane with Mises because Mises is a bigger guard. He's 6'5". So I think you need to go with a bigger guard to pair with Shane so that he can get the smaller matchup. He doesn't have to exert so much energy all the time, because he's going to be carrying a lot of the load, especially with Mises, departing, if he is to leave or not.
Yeah. I also had Partizan on my list, but there's this question of money, and also they're playing on a wild card. So probably it's hard to expect to sign a 2-year contract. Even a 2-year contract is questionable without knowing the future of the club in the EuroLeague organization. So it's a tricky situation. The second big free agent that we have is Kevin Punter. What are your feelings about his potential destination? Let's say, thinking that probably his contract for Partizan now is too heavy, because Punter, in my eyes, he should be the hottest, the number one free agent during this offseason.
Yeah, Punter is special. The way he can score the basketball, the high level difficulty shots. I think this year you started to see some growth in him, putting it on the floor, getting to the rim. He always was an excellent shooter, the pull-up game. But now he showed that he was playing the pick and roll a little bit, started to add a new dimension. And then I liked his leadership. He took a team that was relatively young and, helped put them in a position that a lot of guys weren't used to being in. And he carried them. He showed what he can do in the big moments, the crunch time. I think he for sure is the number one free agent, and all the big offers, all the money you're seeing attached to him, he's deserving. He put on the show. And I think it even helped his value by seeing what happens when he sits out, with the unfortunate suspension. It showed how valuable he was to that team, with one guy being missing and things just kind of unraveling. For me, I did love how Abramovich used him, all the different sets, the movements, getting him the ball in different situations, making him a score different ways. Obviously he would probably like to return there, but I think he would be really good with Ottoman in Panathinaikos. He gets free reign. He's going to play 35 minutes a night. He's going to put them in situations with the ball, allowing him to attack. A lot of middle pick and rolls. A lot of Ottoman likes to pair you with a big who can shoot, so it makes it difficult for you to trap or to bring that attention on him with a hard hedge if you have a 4 or 5 man who can really shoot the ball. And I'm sure that's what he's looking for in the market. But I would really like to see him there. And then the third place is it's not as much attractive as a Partizan or Panathinaikos, but I feel like he fit in well there. It was his first run at making his name in the EuroLeague. Obviously he was at Olympiacos, but this is where he really kind of established himself, and that's Milan. I think they didn't live up to the hype. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. When Shabazz Napier came, they really started to turn a corner, and they showed who they could be. And I think having a guy who could score the ball like Punter for a team that struggled so much in scoring, especially when Shields got injured, I think he would be like a vaccine for them, like someone that you inject into the offense when things aren't working, when plays break down. He's a guy that can kind of change everything. And, that's the third option for I could see him fitting in real well. But that Panathinaikos option, it's really appealing. The money is there. He will be the face of the program. Everything. He can make that home. Athens is a great city. Belgrade is too, don't get me wrong, but that's just something that really interesting. And Partizan, like you said, being a wild card, I believe they'll always be EuroLeague, with that crowd, with the product they put, but you never know. With Panathinaikos, they have that A license. Every year they're going to be there. They can give them a 2 or 3 year deal and feel comfortable with the money.
Yeah, as you said, it feels like it's his destiny to go to Panathinaikos, with Ataman being in love with the players who can execute the freedom they get. He's so smart. He's a great guy to start the project, as we saw in Partizan, leading by example, becoming a captain of Partizan team for the first time in the history of the club. The import player was the captain of the club. It speaks volumes to his leadership as well. And yeah, he's just a perfect scorer for Ataman and for the team, which is on a big rebuild and needs to perform quick. And in a year or two, they must be in the Final Four and to have a legit shot at winning the title. So it would be a perfect connection for him. I saw rumors about Real Madrid. I'm not sure how legit they are. Again, I just think that they have too many options on that team, with Campazzo also coming up. Of course, it would be a perfect combination as well. But Janan Musa also had a great season last year. So I'm not sure if that makes so much sense for them to go Punter. Again, if you have this, ability to sign Kevin Punter, I'm signing him any day on any given club. But Panathinaikos makes more sense to me. I had Barcelona in this list. I thought that somebody, if Saras would try to sign him for Barca, maybe Željko would help him to recruit him over there. And I see him as a great fit next to Tomasz Satoransky. But again, with him being gone, with Roger Grimau taking over, I don't expect Barca making big moves like this. And you mentioned Milan, and it's really interesting destination. I just had this follow-up question to you. If you have a chance to sign Nikola Mirotic or Kevin Punter for this particular Milan team, with having Shawan Shields as your one of the basically key playmaker, and then potentially Shabazz Napier is staying, at least that's the desire of the club. You also have Nicola Melli. Who do you choose, Mirotic or Punter?
Ooh, that's tough. I like them both. I just know what Punter looks like in the Cena system. I've seen it. He scored like 14 points a game. He shot the three over 40%. He hit some big time shots. He was instrumental in helping them get to the Final Four. And for me, a proven commodity is always better knowing the system. I know Mirotic is going to play great. You know what he does night in and night out. But I feel like guards kind of control the outcome of games, especially in the big moments in the crunch time. And for me, I'm always going to go with an elite guard over an elite big. It's just my opinion. Nothing against Mirotic. I think he's one of the best bigs in the EuroLeague, one of the best players. But Punter has like the rhythm, the form. Right now, he has all the juice. He was unstoppable in the playoffs, and he was great all year. And I think he's going to continue to get better.
Yeah, I agree with you, because they already have Nicola Melli, and I'm not a big believer of teams basically investing the large cap of their money for on the front line. Melli is over 2 million. Mirotic also would be somebody over 2 million. I just don't think that the front line wins you the EuroLeague or wins you the title. So I would rather invest in a backcourt stars and would put somebody maybe defensive-minded or versatile big man next to Nicola Melli, and it would make a great lineup.
Mm-hmm.
The next guy, I remember that before the last year, you tried to warn us about Darius Thompson and that he might be good. Now, 1 year later, your former teammate is becoming one of the hottest names in the free agency. Where you would wish him to go if he asks your advice and he has all the offers on his table for the same amount of money, which team you would advise him to go to?
Yeah, I tried to warn everyone. Like, people think I'm biased, but I see it. I studied the game, and I knew Darius was special. Like, I knew he would make an impact. For me, there's really 3 teams that stand out. One is Milan. I feel like him with Shabazz, he put a taller guard. Darius is about 6'5", with Shabazz, two playmakers, two guys who can make things happen. He's good defensively. Obviously, you've seen what he does passing the ball, led the EuroLeague in assists, good in the pick and roll. He can shoot the basketball too. You can't go under. He can make all the passes at his height. He rebounds the ball extraordinarily well. To me, he's like what Nick Kalathis was in those Panathinaikos days, but a better shooter and more athletic. So like that's what I see, a guy who can get you 12 to 13 points, 6 to 8 assists, 5 to 6 rebounds, and go guard the best opposing guard on the other team. Right? These guys are rare. These are 7-figure players. Right? So I feel like he can give another playmaker, which is Milan a lot. That's why they brought in Shabazz that year. Like things just weren't going right. They weren't getting enough creation. One injury happens to a guy like Shields, and that team just goes down the drain. And then you get Napier back, and things kind of fix itself. I think they need another playmaker. He would be perfect there. His wife's Italian. She's from Italy. I mean, he speaks the language. He had been studying Italian since I was playing with him in local. Wife was helping him. He had a tutor. It's an ideal situation. The number 2 situation, and it pains me to say because they beat us in the finals. And, I don't want them to be any stronger, but it's Ephes. I mean, you put him next to Shane Larkin. He's more of a playmaker, more a creator. You can let Shane be that killer, that scorer that he is. You can put Darius on the bigger guard. He's defensive minded. He doesn't care about shots. He can score. He can go get you 18 to 20 points, but he's content to just run the team, to pass, to create, to defend, and to take what's there. He's a good fit. I think in Ephes, they had too many people who were aggressive. Micic is extremely aggressive. Shane's a little bit aggressive, and Will Clyburn's aggressive. And I feel like it kind of disrupted the flow. I think if you throw in a Darius Thompson, it allows Will Clyburn and Shane to be themselves, to be aggressive. And then you have somebody who's a balance and who kind of like resets the tempo for them and allows them to just be those killers that they are. So I really like him there. And then third, and I think he would be, really good there. And, maybe the fit isn't, perfect, but, there's potential for him there. And, I could see him having success. It's Panathinaikos. Maybe not so much now with Vildoza there, but before they had Vildoza, because I feel now they need a pure scorer. That's why I like Punter. But before they have Vildoza, if they would have waited in the market, he would have been good with Ottoman, because if you put him with another scorer, he's a guy that can play make, that can create. He has size. He does different type of things. I think he would have been good there. But he also needs to be next to a pure scorer. I wouldn't be surprised if Partizan comes knocking on his door. They were after him last year between Baskonia and Partizan. And, I still believe that if they had like another point guard who could also create, who could make things happen, make Punter's job easier, it could make them really special. And Abramovich is a guy who lifts players up, who takes their career to another level. And, him playing under Abramovich would be special to see. But for me, it's Milan or it's Ephes. I mean, it's those two teams. Those are ideal fits. They have the money. It's good cities. It's respectable teams that can contend for a Final Four. That's why I would recommend him to go if he ever asked me.
Yeah, it feels like that Darius is so valuable in today's EuroLeague. You mentioned all those teams. Okay, Panathinaikos, as you mentioned, they signed Vildoza, a different type of combo guard who can also score, but he's a different type of player than Shane Larkin, Mike James, or Kevin Punter. But many of these teams has these pure scorers. And now you can bring this tall floor general who can also play defense, who is great fit next to the scorer. It's really hard to find the point guard like him. I think that's how Vasilije Micic built up his name throughout the years in Ephes, where he was more of a combo guard when he became more of a scorer, but he also could have offered this ability, to be a floor general and to play next to the scorer. That's how they were successful with Shane Larkin and Ephes. So Darius Thompson, having Will Clyburn and Shane Larkin, I wouldn't want one more ball hogger, let's say. And what Darius Thompson managed to prove in Baskonia, that he can be very efficient, not scoring the ball, not being the main guy to score the ball. He was averaging 32.6 points per game from scoring and points scored after his assists. That's the EuroLeague high in the second round of EuroLeague, in the second part of the regular season. And he had the lowest usage percentage among the top 7 players in this category. And to me, I mean, and he thrived playing next to Marcus Howard. So I just really believe that he would be a great fit for FS. I also heard that FS really likes him a lot. At the same time, he has some attention from the NBA teams, and that's why he's still putting things on hold a little bit. But if only Vasilije Micic goes to the NBA, whether it's OKC or any other team that he will be traded to, I really think that FS should target him as their number 1 point guard in the market, and he would be a really great fit for this group of guys.
Yeah, and as you said, he's perfect next to scorers. I mean, if you go back to his Casa Brindisi days, he was with D'Angelo Harrison, who's a scorer. For 2
in
years.
Local, he was playing next to you, and he really succeeded. So
he had a great season. Then Marcus Howard. So like for him playing with the Larkin, there's nothing new to him. Playing with the Shields, it's nothing new to him. He's used to being a primary ball handler, but a secondary offensive threat or offense when it comes to scoring. And he's extremely unselfish. I mean, he's the ideal player to have, and he's a freak athlete too. Like a lot of people don't notice it or see it, but he's extremely fast. He's excellent in transition. He can play in the half court as well, and he can finish above bigs. So it's an easy choice if you're a team and you covet exceptional point guard play. I think that's the guy you go after. You know, he was much cheaper last year. I tried to tell people to get him, but now you're going to have to pay.
That's true. And of course, he deserved that. I put 2 guys in one line because I couldn't leave one of them out of this top 5. And I will try to put you in this uncomfortable situation. If you're the GM of the club, and again, for the same amount of money, you have a chance to sign Brandon Davies or Mathias Lessort, which center you would go after? It's a very tricky situation because one is basically on his peak. After this year in Partizan, Mathias Lessort had an amazing season. Very efficient, one of the most efficient players in the EuroLeague. While Brandon Davies, he didn't have a successful ending in Barcelona, and then this year in Milan was really strange. So there's a lot of, let's say, recency bias involved, but you have to be smart. You have to be a smart GM. Which center you're signing?
So for me, I love both of those players' games. I think they're extremely talented. I love what they bring. You know, Lessort brings that energy, rebounding, that toughness, that ferocity. Like, he's going to die on the court for his team. He's going to do everything he can. And he's extremely athletic. He's a bull. Davis is a little bit more skilled. He's really good in the short roll and the pick and pop situations, that mid-range jumper. You know, as you saw those years in Zalgiris and some with Barcelona, he was really good back to basket, facing up against bigs, scoring. So they're 2 different styles of bigs. So I'll say this. For Panathinaikos, me knowing Ottoman's style, playing for him for 2.5 years, I would go with Davis because he's extremely good in the short roll. You've seen him do it with Sertac, Sonali at Barcelona. He helped get him easy shots all game at that free throw area, you know, playing in the pick and roll with Micic and Larkin, you know, getting in those actions at those little elbow jumpers. I think Davis would thrive in that system with a good lead guard. Imagine Punter and Davis playing that middle pick and roll, and Davies short rolling, little mid-range jumper. Team scared. You got to give up that jumper. You got to give up Punter coming off the screen, going to his pull-up. Like, it's tough. But for any other team, I would go with Lessort. He just wants it. You could tell, like, he plays like he has something to prove. He's also at a point in his career where now he's starting to get to the big contracts, trying to get to high level. And I think guys like that oftentimes play with that chip and they're hungry. There's guys who've been paid a lot of money and they still come and bring it every night. But the way he plays, I haven't seen a motor, effort, or energy like this since I've been overseas. He's the hardest playing big man in Europe, and it's not even debatable. Like, I think, and it seems like he doesn't get tired. I mean, he played big minutes at Partizan, and he still was rebounding at a high rate. He still was scoring. He's still dunking, swinging on the rim, screaming at the crowd. And he's someone that can get the whole fan base engaged. So for me, minus Panathinaikos, all the other teams in the EuroLeague, he's the guy I'm going for.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with you. It depends a lot on the team that you have. And for instance, I see Mathias Lessort as a perfect fit for the team like Maccabi Tel Aviv. A big man who can roll, who brings this whole energy. It would be a perfect fit for the backcourt like Lorenzo Brown and Wade Baldwin. Brandon Davies, if you need more versatility, you go to teams like Panathinaikos. The thing with Mathias Lessort, I wouldn't call it an issue, but the issue for his market stock is that I think he's a big man who requires playing big minutes. That's when he feels himself the best. That's where he can bring the most efficiency to his team. And I think that was the problem for him in his previous tries in the EuroLeague, like in Maccabi itself last year, where he didn't have a big role and he couldn't, show all of his capabilities. So let's say looking at this free agency picture, it's hard to imagine Mathias Lessort going to Madrid, although he would be a very interesting fit next to Eddie Tavares. I'm not sure how he would feel playing less than 20 minutes. The same goes with Olympiacos is closed. It's done already. Fenerbahce next to Jonathan Motley. I'm not sure he needs that kind of situation. So he has to go somewhere where he gets big minutes. I think that he would be okay for Panathinaikos. I would love to see him in Maccabi, but for sure, if there's a chance for Partizan to keep him, that would be the best for the player and for the club if they manage to find this financial agreement.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
And the last hot free agent that we have is the one we already discussed a little bit, Nikola Mirotic. Basically, there are, if we would rely on the reports on media, 3 main teams were mentioned that could be in a race for Mirotic. It's Olympiacos if Sasha Vezenkov leaves for the Sacramento Kings. It's Monaco and it's Milan. How would you rank these 3 teams in terms of finding the best fit for Mirotic?
For me, I would say Milan number 1, only because it's a known commodity. You know how they play. If they bring back Shabazz Napier, I think those 2 would be excellent, in pick and pop situations and in pick and roll situations. Shabazz is a guy who can score, but he naturally wants to pass. I think that they can kind of hide some of his defensive deficiencies, with other guys, with the length, with things of that nature. It's not that I don't like Monaco, but I feel like they have enough scoring, like Okobo, Lloyd, Mike James. I feel like you have all that there. They do desperately need shooting. But I would prefer them to have a guy who can really shoot, who doesn't need touches, if that makes sense. Not a guy that you run the offense through, just a guy who provides the proper spacing and allows you to go heavy with your 3-guard lineup. That giving you so much success. If you bring a guy like Mirotic, it kind of takes away what Monaco does and it changes their whole offensive game plan because he's so talented. You don't sign a guy like that, pay $3 million or $2.5 million and tell him to stand and spot up and wait for the ball. Like, that's a guy that you have to give the ball to. But then if you give the ball to him, who gets the ball less? And you've already seen that you've had success. You won the French title. You went to the EuroLeague Final Four. Are you going to tell Mike James he gets the ball less? You're going to tell Leah Kobo less? Jordan Lloyd less after we just came off a Final Four run? I think not. So for me, that's why I don't like that. I feel like in Milan, they'll be more receptive to him because they did not have success. They did not get to that level. Oftentimes, when you're a new big name coming to a team that's already done it, you have a Draymond Green situation when Kevin Durant was there. We won a championship without you. We don't need you. And it can get to that point if a guy is changing the style of play too much and it's coming at the cost of wins or other guys feeling involved in a game. So that's why I say that's number 1 for me. Monaco would be number 2. If that makes sense. Just my opinion and just how I kind of see things shifting. But Milan was just so bad offensively at multiple points this year that they needed somebody who can manufacture offense. And he's a guy that I can throw the ball into the post. I can do pick and pop with. He draws fouls and he shifts the whole defense. He's what you call a guy that you have to game plan for, but also a guy that you have to bring help defenders for. And that's going to allow those other players to get open shots, easy opportunities, Melee getting spot up jumpers. If Billy Barron's there, him getting his spot up shots, like easy offense. I feel like Milan just had to work too hard offensively just to manufacture buckets.
When you mentioned all those things about Monaco, I already can see the picture 1 year from now. Mike James, Elio Kobo, Jordan Lloyd, and Nikola Mirotic taking a picture with the EuroLeague title and then tweeting only one ball was needed. that was a hilarious but great tweet because we were questioning them from the beginning. Even Mike himself, he had some questions how that will work. So, yeah, that would be a hell of an adjustment for. I would feel bad for Coach Sasha Obradovic. Having to deal with these guys, with these gentlemen. At the same time, I agree with your points, but from the excitement part, as a media person, I would really like to have Mirotic on Monaco squad. It would add a lot of excitement, a lot of stuff. Probably it would be one of the most hated teams in the EuroLeague because you have Mike James on the roster and then Nikola Mirotic, who doesn't have the best image, I would say, among the fans, would join them to make this, again, Monaco team built from scratch, from nothing, suddenly a championship contender. And there's this thing about hate and Nikola Mirotic. Watching this, maybe it's a problem of the Twitter bubble that I have on my Twitter feed. But there's this feeling that a lot of basketball fans, first of all, treat Nikola Mirotic and the Barcelona story as a failure. As, let's say, top paid player in Europe for the last few years, not bringing a single EuroLeague title, according to them, choking in the most important moments of the season of Barcelona. That's their arguments evaluating Nikola Mirotic. What do you think about this whole Nikola Mirotic project when he landed in Barcelona in 2019 with all these expectations and the way it went and the way it ended as well, because that's important part we have to address regarding the job security that players don't have here in Europe?
I think he was excellent individually. He showed he was unguardable. He shot the ball at amazing splits, always efficient from the 2-point shot, from the three, from the free throw line. He demanded double teams oftentimes on the block. He was too big for fours. He was too mobile or too good a spacer when it came to shooting for the 5 position. I think he was used correctly too. He got a lot of touches in Barcelona. Sarunas made sure that he was heavily involved. I feel like the usage was a little bit less as the years continued to go on compared to his first year there, but he did a good job with them. I think oftentimes there's so much pressure on a guy when you're paying him. I mean, I don't know, over $5 million. Like, you expect a title. I get it. But I mean, your team budget was over 35 million-ish. He's not alone. He's not the only guy. You're paying also a lot of other guys a lot of money. So it's not solely on him. What about all those times guys underperformed and he carried them? He helped put them in that position. He helped keep them there. You got to remember, this was a guy who was battling some type of Achilles injury, missed a great portion of the season, and he rushed back trying to make sure he could help his team and play. That showed his character. The other guys making that type of money, might really take their time coming back. They got multi-year deals. They have big money. He's in Barcelona. This is a good time for your family. But he showed that he's a guy that likes to compete. And came back. Didn't get a surgery or nothing, but that helped speed up the recovery, I believe, and put him in position to play. So yeah, would you like to see him win a championship? Of course, one of the best talents in Europe, for sure, highest paid. But I think they had moments, they had opportunities, and he didn't play well in the last game. I don't really consider it choking, just because in basketball, there's so many things that can happen. Like, you can prepare properly, you don't feel nervous, you don't feel anything, and you just might have a day where the defense does a good job when you miss shots. So I get, if Barcelona paid him that money thinking we guaranteed a EuroLeague, of course they're going to think it was a choke or it was a problem, but it wasn't. Like, sometimes you play against a team that's better than you, or matchups or everything. I believe if it was a series, Barcelona holds that trophy, and Sarunas probably has more than one EuroLeague in his tenure at Barcelona. But since it's Final Four format, I mean, anything can happen. And as we saw, usually they were on the bad side of things happening.
Yeah, I've checked stats since 2019, and Nikola Mirotic led the EuroLeague in efficiency, his efficiency average since 2019 was 19.6. That's solid. He was also third in scoring behind Mike James and Alexis Shved. And he was averaging in the last 4 years, he was averaging almost 17 points. And the other big man closest to him was and is Sasha Vezenkov with 13 per game. Shengelia ranks third among the bigs with 12. So that's not easy for bigs to produce these numbers. And what's more remarkable, that he averaged almost 17 points on 62% from 2-point and 40% from 3-point. So that's a MVP hell of an efficiency. Yeah, exactly. That's why he also got this MVP award. He was 7th in rebounding since 2019, 5th in total rebounds, 6th in total 3-pointers made. Then he came in 2019. The EuroLeague season was cut short due to COVID. But then it's hard to count that COVID ACB title that Baskonia won, because it was in force majeure. It was played under force majeure conditions. But in 3 following years, he made 3 Final Fours. He won 2 ACB titles, 2 Copa del Rey titles. And once again, it's very hard to judge players based on 2-game weekend, because there's this narrative that Nikola Mirotic went to 6 Final Fours and didn't win a single title. But at the same time, his first 3 Final Four appearances were in Real Madrid, where he was like 20, 21, 22 years old before leaving to NBA. So it's unfair to judge him not winning the title when he was just one of the guys on long Real Madrid bench. Here in Barca, the expectations were different. But again, I'm a big believer in the process. I'm always supporting the process over the final result, which can be impacted by so many different factors. But there's this one thing which I'm not blaming Nikola Mirotic. I'm not blaming any player in this situation. But to pay 5 million euros, over 5 million euros to one player, I think in Europe, it's a mistake, because basically for 5 millions, the last year for 5 millions, you could get Mike James, Will Clyburn, Darius Thompson, and I don't know, Nigel Hayes Davis or any other great big. So you basically have
a great roster. That's a great roster.
Amazing starting lineup. So in Europe, it just doesn't make any sense to spend so much money. And of course, Barca made a lot of noise by this signing, because Mirotic had this great deal with Utah Jazz in place, but he rejected that offer. He accepted Barcelona offer, and it was a big shocker in the EuroLeague market, which was great for the EuroLeague basketball, that, you know, we could compete with the NBA, and they were giving a great contract as well there in Utah. So that was great. But if you try to be smart in Europe, it doesn't make any sense. So if anybody has any complaints, I would address those complaints to the front office from 2019, that in Barca, they decided to go with this move. And I think that Mirotic was carrying this big chip on his shoulder, but again, it's not his fault that somebody had some expectations. You know, he didn't become a better player, whether he was making 5 million a year, 10 million a year, or 1 million a year. So I think that it was just a mistake by Barcelona front office. And I think that, I mean, there's this another topic, the salary cap that might be introduced in the EuroLeague. And from what I understood, although as the newly elected EuroLeague CEO, Paulius Matiunas, mentioned, although that they're in advanced processes of finally establishing the salary cap, there are still some meetings that have to be done. There are still some, you know, demands that have to be pleased and accepted, and it's not clear yet. Although the meetings are taking place right now and during this off season, it's not clear when and what kind of salary cap we will have, how it's gonna work. But I think that, again, I'm speaking of players' defense. If we're talking about the salary cap, then we have to ensure somehow that players has this job security. If you make a commitment to play for one team, I don't know, for 3, 4, 5 years, it cannot be like that. After one bad season, let's say the GM, the coach, is not happy with you, and then he goes and says, hey, we want to, you know, terminate the contract. You take half of the money you were supposed to get this year not even counting the following year, the remaining years on your contract. But, we just want to get rid of you. It shouldn't work this way. Because players signing these long-term contracts, they also, take this into account. I'm accepting the commitment for 5 years, and maybe I'm refusing the better offer for 2 years because they made, 5-year deal. Great job, supposedly great job security for my future here in Europe. So it's not fair from this perspective as well.
Yeah, I don't like the salary cap idea, only because you see the parity in the EuroLeague. There was no salary cap, and you see the closeness of the games, how competitive the playoffs were. The basketball picture looked excellent, and there was no salary cap there. There was no ceilings. There was nothing stopping it, but it didn't. I think a salary cap will hurt the final picture of the game. It's going to stop you from getting some players coming from America who could make a splash. It's going to stop some teams from being able to, be as aggressive in the market. It also, prevents those smaller teams from having to up their game and having to improve themselves. It allows them to be content where they are. And I think for the game to grow and to continuously evolve, you need to continue to have no salary cap to allow players to continue to compete, to push for more motivation for guys to get better, for younger players out there to continue to work on their games because they see that they can grow, they can do more. Because through the years, Europe hasn't had a lot of stability for coaches or for players. And so for you to want a salary cap when guys don't even know if they're going to get their payment on time or if they're going to have a job next year and they have a 2 or 3 year deal, it's kind of outrageous. And then with the salary cap, you also have to announce numbers, what guys are making, what things are going on. And, I don't think that's, I think one of the appeals of being overseas is kind of the privacy and security. It doesn't matter, people don't need to know exactly what you're getting paid and those type of things. Like we don't know exactly what, people in the EuroLeague in those type of positions, chairmen, all these boards, we don't know what they're making. I think it's better that way just to kind of keep it basketball, keep the financial aspect out of it. If a team can afford a player, let them go get him. We've seen it. The team with the most money doesn't always win. So it's okay. If there was one team continuously winning year after year, like the Celtics back in the 70s and 80s, okay, like I would understand. Or the Lakers, you're tired of seeing the two teams competing, but we're not. We had a great playoff format. Why change it? We had great up and downs, a lot of surprises. So there's no need to kind of throw that twist in there when the EuroLeague product, I think, was at the best that it's been in years.
I couldn't expect any different answer from your side. So,
I only got a few more years left, but I still want to see the young players get paid, be able to put on a good product. I got a few years left in me, but I'm going to always, want the best for the game of basketball, and for those who are putting on the product. And I think a salary cap is a killer to the growth, and it will allow the NBA to continually to grow because their salary cap grows every year, and their salary cap is $123 million for a roster. You can go over. What's the European salary cap going to be? Like, it's just not realistic. Like, unless you're going to have crazy amount of money like the NBA does and invest all this stuff outside of basketball to grow the brand, I don't see no need for it. There's no salary cap in football, right? In the Champions League for football, and they're very successful, one of the most popular leagues in the world. So why would we go do it?
Yeah, and it's very interesting how they're gonna make it work, where I see a lot of threats for the EuroLeague and European basketball in general with free two-way contracts in the NBA, with the paychecks increasing in the G League, in Australia as well. Japan, they can offer some good money for mid-level EuroLeague players. There's a lot of threats coming worldwide for the EuroLeague, so I'm not sure how they're gonna work it out. And I'm really intrigued to hear their arguments, how it's gonna help the league, the European basketball in a long term. Because if that's the case, that's fine. But for now, from this point, I see more, let's see, red flags than benefits to European basketball. So it's gonna be interesting to hear their side and how they're gonna find those solutions. The last topic I wanted to address. In front of me, I see the Team USA roster for the 2023 FIBA World Cup per reports, and there are at least 11 names on it reported. So the list includes Paolo Banchero, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Brandon Ingram, Jaren Jackson Jr., Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, Bobby Portis, and Austin Reeves. How do you feel about these guys winning the World Cup this year?
It's going to be tough. European basketball has continued to grow the landscape. I mean, so many players are such of a talent and high level. I mean, you see it in the NBA with all the international stars, but you also see it with the EuroLeague and a lot of guys, in different leagues, Euro Cup, Champions League, whatever the case may be. But, the bridge is closing, the gap is closing. And that's why a lot of these NBA teams are coming over and trying to take and stash that European talent. I think they have a lot of young players who are good, but the European game is different. We've seen it in the past when you took 03, a young LeBron, a young D Wade, a young Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, Chris Paul. Like, these guys were exceptional players, but they were still young, and it was a different style of play, and they didn't have the success that they wanted. And with this roster, I like Anthony Edwards. I love Brandon Ingram. Like, I think those guys are special. But I still feel like, they're missing some things. I'm not seeing a dominant point guard. I like Jalen Brunson, but I like to see a dominant point guard really good in the pick and roll. I like to see better big shooters. Paolo can shoot it, but he's still young. He's still kind of finding his way. I wouldn't say he's an elite shooter. I think you need to have, guys who are not specialty players. I think in Europe, guys who have the most success coming overseas, they're guys who can do a lot of things. And in the NBA, they kind of focus on specialty guys who are exceptional, at one thing or one category. Not to say that they can't do other things, but, it's more of a specialty league where guys struggle. If in Europe, if you can only do scoring or if you can only do shooting, or, it's better to have a balance. And I think they could have focused more on that and put some vet leadership in there. This is a very young roster, and it's a roster that I don't know where leadership's going to come from. And I don't know who's going to take control in the clutch moments. I think it's going to be Brandon Ingram. He's the most talented, but it's going to be interesting to see the picture come together. I think they need better guard play. Their wings are good. Edwards and Ingram can carry them to a far place, but I want a different point guard, and I'd like a different five. But Jaren Jackson is athletic, and he can make things happen. But I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't seem like a roster that's going to strike a lot of fear into the European nations. They're going to feel like, oh, we can beat them. Oh, we got a chance. And if you bring a different roster or maybe a couple of different guys here, sometimes guys feel defeated before the game even starts.
Which national team do you see as a team to beat among the rest of the world?
I think if Lorenzo Brown plays, Spain could be there. Willie Hermangonis is really good. Lorenzo Brown, they have those pieces. They have continuity. They have guys who've been playing together forever. You got to remember, this is a USA team that's never played together. We just threw them together. Go win the World Cup. Like, come on, this is extremely difficult. They don't have any chemistry built. They don't even know some of the sets. They don't have a style of play developed yet. Nothing. And they're going to be playing against guys who've been playing with each other since they were 14 years old. Like, it's tough. I also like, I always like anytime Luca's on the court, they got a chance, just because he's that type of player. So Slovenia. And then I had to say someone else, Greece. You got Giannis. And, they have high level EuroLeague type of players. The Sloukases, the Galathis, these type of guys can play. Pop Nicolau, probably Dorsey, I don't know, whatever. But, Greece is definitely a threat.
Yeah. Watching this list of potential Team USA roster, I'm not scared, but at the same time, this team kind of reminds me the 2010 Team USA that won the World Cup in Turkey, because there was Kevin Durant, a new shining NBA star, and we have Brandon Ingram, somebody closest to his player profile as well. So maybe these young guys following Brandon Ingram's leadership will repeat that run. And I think that a lot of depends on who the rest of the world will have, because now we have Victor Wembanyama officially announcing that he's not going to play for France. Although I don't think that he's a game changer for French national team, but he's one of the first marquee star of the tournament that said that I'm not going to the World Cup. There's Nikola Jokic case, where from what I've heard, and also I think that it was reported as well, that there's very slight chance that he will join Serbian national team. From what I've heard, it's not like 100% clear that Giannis Antetokounmpo will be available for the Greek national team. So all these potential absences are the game-changing factors, both for Team USA and for the rest of the world, to challenge Team USA basketball one more time and in the major FIBA competitions. So a lot of depends on who those teams will have.
Yeah, you made good points.
Man, I'm happy that we didn't manage to get the third guest on our show, because we already spoke almost 1 hour and a half. So you can imagine if we had another guest on the show.
Maybe we would have talked less because we didn't have to fill so much time.
That's true. It was a pleasure to have you on this podcast, Errick, as always. So stay tuned during this crazy off-season time. Follow BasketNews.com, both on our website and our YouTube channel. We also need many followers on BasketNews.com Twitter channel to reach 45K followers. And of course, follow Errick McCollum. He, from time to time, he tweets something interesting, something smart, and something worth an attention.
It's always a pleasure to be here with you on the show, and I appreciate the shout out. And hope my Lithuanian fans aren't too upset with me for some of my predictions throughout the year. But I got love for you guys. And shout out to my boy Kuzmiskis.
You made Greek fans mad, not Lithuanians. Lithuanians don't care. They weren't in the Final Four. Greeks were there, so
yes, they probably were upset. But it was a great year, the EuroLeague basketball, and now we got a exciting off season to look forward to, and to see things take place in the landscape of the basketball world.
Yep. So thanks for watching, and see you soon.
See you.